Guys, welcome to another video. You've got Mr. Everything English, and today we are talking about the 2024 Examiner's Report for AQA English Language, and we will be going over the top 10 most common mistakes identified by the examiners, and hopefully we can learn from those mistakes and make sure we don't do the same thing in 2025. Everything Education. Tuition for maths, English and science. So number one, guys, the first mistake that they identified was for paper 1, question 1, and this was the fact that students were selecting quotes from the wrong lines. Now, we say this every year as teachers, and as students, you think this will never be me. But guys, trust me, when you're under the lights, when you're in exam conditions and you're under pressure, mistakes happen. So a simple trick to avoid this is please put a box around the lines that they are talking about. So if they say look at lines 1 to 7, simply put a box around lines 1 to 7, just so you can visually see not to go out of these lines. And another point they made here was that students were taking quotes from the context box. Guys, the context box doesn't count as lines 1 and 2 and 3. Line 1 starts in the margin where it says line 1 at the start of paragraph number 1. The second mistake that was identified was students were miscopying quotes. Do not add words to quotes. Do not change words in quotes. Be careful, be conscious, be aware, just to make sure you are copying the quotes exactly as they appear in the text. Number 3, guys, and this mistake is in reference to paper 1, question 2, and paper 2, question 3. Both of these are the language question. And the language question is all about the effect. But what AQA said was that students were talking about language, were talking about quotes, were talking about words out of context. What that meant, or what that means is this. Let's say you have a whole paragraph and you select a word or you select a quote. You just talk about what that word or that quote means, but you don't read around to figure out what that quote actually saying. So for example, if the quote is talking about, I don't know, John is yawning. Now, you might say that John is yawning shows that he's tired based upon that quote. But when you read around the quote, you might learn that John is sitting at school and that his teacher is boring him. So now the wider paragraph, the wider writing helps you understand, enhances your understanding of the quote you selected. So AQA said, guys, that a common mistake that was being made by students was selecting quotes, selecting words, but not talking about them in context of the wider extract. Number 4, guys, and I say this one all the time. They said that a big mistake being made by students was students were using overly long quotations. I've been saying this to my students since day one. And if you're one of my students, you know this. I beg you guys, only quote what you need. If you're gonna quote a quote that's this long and you're only gonna talk about this much of it, then only quote this much of it. Don't quote massive quotes. Secondly, train yourself to pick quotes that are small, that are short. My rule, guys, is this. If you're going to copy a quote down, maximum a line. Like, try to fit what you want to say at a push into one line. You shouldn't be quoting 2, 3, 4 lines at a time, especially for the language question. Because, guys, remember, the more you quote, the more you must talk about. Because if you're going to quote this much and only talk about this much, then why did you bother quoting all of it? Whatever you quote, make sure you need it. Otherwise, chop it down to exactly the part you need. All right, guys, number 5. What was the 5th most common mistake? And this is for the structure questions. They said, guys, loads of students were able to identify structural devices, but they struggled with the effect because they weren't discussing the why. That's their words. They said the students were not discussing the why. Now, what does that mean? That means, why did the writer use the long paragraph over here and not over there? Why did they shift the focus from there to there? This is what helps you analyze the effect of structure. Why is it happening there and not over there? Why did they go from zooming into there to zooming out to over here? So don't just pick the technique, but explain why that is happening at that particular point. Then guys, number 6, the 6th mistake that was identified was for paper 2, question number 4. And this is where we compare the writer's viewpoints. And what they said, guys, was this. They said that students were able to identify the viewpoint. For example, the writer views the pen as being amazing. But they said that a lot of students stopped there. They weren't able to identify methods, and as a result, they weren't able to explain the effect. So just make sure, guys, that when you are going through the questions, when you are going through paper 2, question 4, you're not just giving the writer's view, but you're also able to back this view with quotations. And you're also able to back this view with methods. Now, guys, number 7. Let's move on to the question 5s. Let's move on to the question 5s. 7, 8, 9, and 10. This is all going to be about the common mistakes for question number 5. The first mistake that they identified and that they said that students were doing was that students were using awkward vocabulary. They were using vocabulary that doesn't comfortably fit your writing. Now guys, if you go and watch my video on vocabulary, this is what I say. Stop using words that are awkward. Words like discombobulated. Words like supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Words like demure. Well, demure is a bit of a weird one, but you get what I mean, guys. What you want to use when you're learning vocabulary is you want to learn vocabulary that seamlessly fits into your writing. Hence why, what do I always say? Replace your basic adjectives. Replace the word sad with the word morose. Replace the word happy with the word jubilant. Replace the word angry with the word indignant. Because these are words that we can use quite seamlessly. Don't overly replace them with awkward big words that don't fit what you're trying to say. Next one, guys, and this one, I get it. I agree with this. There's a type of student who does this. So this is what AQA said. AQA said that a lot of students are using too much dialogue. They criticize this, the overuse of long dialogue. And I know why you guys do this. Students who do this are the ones who want to fill up space on a page, and they want to make it look like they've written a lot. So they have a lot of dialogue. Hello, how are you? I'm good. How are you? I'm good. What's your name? My name is John. What's your name? My name is Peter. And by the time they finish doing that, like half a page of their writing is just dialogue. Guys, don't hide behind dialogue. If you watch any of my videos, what do I say? I say do dialogue once in your entire story. Make it last a couple of lines, get the mark and move on. But don't hide behind dialogue. And this is what AQA has also picked. AQA has picked that students are using long pieces of writing where they're just doing dialogue, and they picked it as something they want to be improved. Stop doing that. Number 9, I believe we're on number 9, guys. And this one, I love. This is going to be a rare moment when I say I love AQA. But for the first time, me and AQA kind of agree. If you look at the majority of my videos, if not all my videos, I never talk about imagery. Imagery is a dead language device. I hate it with a passion. But they said that a criticism of the students sitting the 2024 exam was the overuse of the same language devices, and they picked out specifically graphic imagery as a device that was overly used. My simple fix to this, guys, is please make sure you're using a range of language devices in your writing. Follow my plan. Paragraph 1, simile, metaphor. Paragraph 2, personification, chromomorphism. Go watch those videos. But a simple fix, guys, is make sure you're using a range of language devices. And number 10, and for this one, they specifically referred to paper 2, question 5, which was your speech, your letter, your article, and so on. They said that students were writing too much. Imagine that. Imagine that in the examiner's report, that a problem with the 2024 exam series was that students were writing too much. But I get it. This is exactly what I tell you. And in the examiner's report, they talk about how writing 2 to 3 pages is enough. They criticized people that were writing 5 and 6 and 7, because the more you write, the more language you need, the more vocabulary you need, the more punctuation you need. So the more you write, your grade's kind of coming down at the same time. Secondly, you question, how are you writing that much in 45, less than that, because you got planning time and so on. So they said a problem with that exam, that question, paper 2, question 5, was students were writing too much. Guys, cut back, cut back, cut back. And those were the top 10 mistakes that were identified from the examiner's report from AQA English Language, paper 1, paper 2, from the 2024 exam series. Now there's loads of other mistakes. It's a massive document. I could sit here and talk about it for half an hour. But I gave you the top 10, the ones that kept coming up across both papers. And these were those 10. All right, guys, we learn from this. We learn from this, and we make sure that we don't do this in our mock exams, in our assessments, and then ultimately, guys, in our GCSE exam next year. As always, guys, it's been Mr. Everything English. Peace.